Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Bailey Dean, and I teach band at River Bluff Middle School. The group you see on stage is the River Bluff Jazz Band. This is an extracurricular ensemble made up of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade band students that meets after school once a week. This past Saturday, we had the opportunity to perform at the WSMA District Solo and Ensemble Festival in Verona, and I need to celebrate this group a little bit because they earned a 1, which is a top rating, and I'm so proud of them on their hard work. We have 3 tunes for you tonight, and we have had a lot of fun learning and making music together this year. I'm going to turn over the microphone to a student speaker to tell you a bit about the first tune we will be playing.
Hi, I'm Theo, and I play percussion in the jazz band. Our first song is called Green Onions. It has a swing feel and a catchy melody. You are sure to be singing on your way home. They also played it at my parents' wedding, which is really cool. Thank you.
and I play bass and piano in the River Bluff Jazz Band. We're going to slow it down a bit and play a familiar ballad called What a Wonderful World. This will feature soloist Olivia Hayes on flute. We have only rehearsed this song 3 or 4 times and have progressed very quickly. We are excited to perform it. Please enjoy What a Wonderful World.
Hello, my name is Damon. I play alto saxophone. Our last tune for you tonight is called Poco Loco, which translates to a little crazy. Poco Loco has a Latin feel and features Nora Harrison on alto saxophone, Guinevere Olsen, Shumate Olsen on baritone, and Josiah Moore on tenor saxophone. After we are finished, student stage crew volunteers will need to come on stage.
I recycled my program notes from January. Oops. Thank you again for joining us tonight. We hope you enjoy Poco Loco.
Well, hey, good evening, everybody. How you doing? Yeah. Hey, how about another round of applause for Miss Bailey Dean and the River Bluff Jazz Band? For those of you that maybe are new to the program, my name is Dan Schmidt. I'm the high school band director. The group that you see right in back of me here is the Stoughton High School Jazz Ensemble. And we are so appreciative that you came out to support these students, to support all of our jazz programs, not just here in Stoughton, but in Dane County too, with Madison College here. We just really appreciate it. You know, one of the really cool things about this program tonight is the continuity of it, right? So we're seeing students at the very beginning of their jazz journey, of their musical journey, and then we're seeing the next stop in that journey. And then when Madison College takes the stage, you're going to see a bunch of different people at way different stages of that journey. People that are just starting college and people that have been in the community for a while that are making really great music, who maybe played in their high school jazz ensemble or their college jazz ensemble and then didn't stop playing, found ways to keep playing throughout their lives no matter what they did, whether they were drawing a salary for making music or not. So that's one of the reasons why we love this concert. The first tune we'd like to play for you tonight, just a really cool tune by a guy named Joseph Zawinul. This is called Mercy, Mercy, Mercy. Playing some pretty awesome keys over there. We got Mr. Peter Strassner. As you can see, we are blessed with just a ton of saxophones. Great problem to have. It is probably one of the best of all the instruments, though I might be a little biased in saying that. But this particular tune, the second tune we're about to play, it's called Blue Train, named for the great tenor saxophone player John Coltrane. And so in that spirit, we're going to feature two of our young musicians covering the first tenor part. We're going to have, again, up on tenor saxophone, Mr. Alex Thiessen. So we're going to have Josh Walker. I'll get the names right. And then we're going to pass it on over to Mr. Andrew Scott. This is Blue Train.
Thank you.
feature, again, on this next chart, Mr. Andrew Scott on solo over, is it a pentatonic scale? He tells me it's a pentatonic scale. If you don't know what that sounds like, you're about to find out. We believe that the pronunciation of this chart is Nzembo Nambwala Zamba. It's based off of a really cool chant, and the idea is that the melody of this came from voice first and then came to instrument. And so you're going to hear a lot of really cool passing back and forth as this melody is kind of repeated by different instruments and layered on and on and on. This tune was composed for jazz ensemble by just a great in the history of Wisconsin jazz, former jazz professor up at Lawrence University named Fred Stern. This is Nzembo Nambwala Zamba. Never before has a Phrygian scale sounded so cool. This next chart is a tune by Thad Jones. This is a down-tempo tune. This is a ballad, and something just a little bit different for you. We are featuring on this tune, very special, our second trumpet player. You're going to hear a lot of Gray Graffin in this one. This is Thad Jones, A Child's Born. close out our portion of the program tonight, we got a great Dizzy Gillespie tune. Trumpet player, Dizzy Gillespie. This is a Latin tune called Manteca. Interestingly enough, you're going to hear Madison College maybe close out their portion of the program with the same thing. We're going to have some fun. It'll be great. Hey, on that note, I really want to thank these students for their hard work and their dedication. Man, it's been a busy week of concerts and festivals and stuff for us. But I also really want to, before they get on stage as well, thank Madison College and their director, Mr. Jamie Kemper, for coming on out and providing us with some music this evening. It's just so great to be able to be in a community that values the arts as this does, as Dane County does. And I think you're about to see and hear that, not just from us, but from them as well. So, this is Manteca.
much. Madison College Big Band. Wow, what a pleasure to be back here at Stoughton High School. Give it up for the River Bluff Middle School Jazz Ensemble. That drummer's time was rock solid. So many good players in that group. That flute solo, tubist. I mean, unbelievable, all the great musicianship that they showed off for you all. And then, of course, the Stoughton High School Jazz Ensemble. Congratulations. A lot of great talent in there. I was really paying close attention to what that pianist was doing, the bassist, that sax section, what was going on. That was a lot of fun. So when we think about jazz, there's a handful of people that come to mind. You might think of Count Basie, you might think of Duke Ellington, you might think of the writer and arranger of Switch in Time that we just played, Sammy Nestico. One group or ensemble that might not come to mind is Radiohead. Yeah, Radiohead. But they are a band, I swear, this might be my millennialhood speaking through here, but they will stand the test of time. I really do believe that. And a bunch of really fine jazz arrangers feel the same way. So they actually created a Radiohead project, and a bunch of Radiohead tunes were masterfully arranged by really great jazz writers and arrangers. And we're gonna play for you one of those arrangements of Bloom right now. I bet you didn't come here tonight thinking you're going to hear some Radiohead. So I'm really happy to deliver that for you. We're going to bring up celebrating 52 years consecutively with this band. No joke. You did not mishear that. 52, folks. 5-2. Yes. The one and only, we can give it up for Bob Ramsdell. Bob Ramsdale, come on, come on. Hello, young lords. So, just a handful of months ago, we lost a master of music. I mean, I can't actually think of anybody that dabbled in all the different elements of music. Everything from mastering an instrument to mastering the craft of arranging and composing to mastering production, and then like passing it on and bringing up the next generations. Do you all know who I'm thinking of? I sure hope so. Anybody want to take a guess? Quincy Jones. The one and only, Quincy Jones. And we're going to play one of his really early hits. It's going to feature a couple of our trumpet players, Jones Bones. See, one time, take it away. Straight through. One, two. That was Greg Gillespie starting us off. Followed by Charlie Chichia. We're going to keep going down the trumpet section here. Great opportunity for this. AJ Bisek. Beatrice Lawrence playing that really great solo on Bloom. We have not only Gillespie, but we also have a Bach. This is Stevie Bach. You've ever seen a more talented band. Wow. And then also celebrating many decades with this band, Don Breyer. A former band director himself, a band leader himself. Give it up for Don Breyer. Trumpet. We're going to play a really fun tune with a different feel. It's got, it's definitely West Coast and it's definitely in 3. Here it is, Willow Crest. Mike Clipson over there on the trombone. You've already met Bob Lansdell. Playing third trombone, we happen to have the same last name, and he happens to be my father. Give it up for Jerry Kemper. Also a longtime band director and teacher and educator and former superintendent of schools in La Crosse. That's my dad for you. And then, playing bass trombone, Jim Cunningham. And trombone section. One, two, three, four. Greg Straub over there on the far end playing tenor saxophone. Mesa Ale playing tenor saxophone. Aaron Motherway on alto. Dion Mills on alto. John Carey on tenor saxophone. George Alexander right here on baritone sax. Before we play our last tune, it's gonna kind of feature our rhythm section. So it's also our last tune. So this is the last opportunity I get to introduce some more people. Brandon Baumgart on keys. Charlie Lobbs on kit. I agree with that. Dan Schwartz on guitar. Chris Davis on bass. He's going to play the bass line on Manteca. And our librarian, Matt, and bassist, of course, but Matt Podolsky. Good, just a couple more good words before we let you rock out to this version of Manteca. I know that the high school jazz ensemble also played Manteca. This is a very different arrangement. The original version of Manteca is Superfly, and we played that a number of years ago. This one is much more commercial. It's a bit more commercial. It has it has a similar essence and some of the great Latin feel, but it's not the OG. But it's still a lot of fun. I didn't know why I went on that diatribe. But hey, you know what? You know what's going on here? First of all, I really appreciate that new cafeteria and commons, that space that you have. This is going to be a really great space for all the students here at Stoughton High School. So congratulations, that's awesome. And just around the corner, you're going to have a brand new spanking band room. Yeah, and I don't know if you haven't if you have not given Dan Schmidt a big hug recently, you got to do it, because going through renovation is the worst. It's the worst. I'm a fellow band teacher. In addition to working at Madison College and teaching there and administering there, I also am the band teacher at La Follette High School. And the amount of stuff that band teachers have to oversee is insane. And then when you're asked to move all that stuff so that the space can get renovated and get it back, it's a disaster. We just did it at La Follette. It's insane. So anyway, lots of love to Mr. Schmidt for leading that charge. And I just want to give a quick thanks to all the students out there listening and all of your parents. What's happening in our music classrooms every day is absolutely essential. It often gets talked about as this extra, or they use words like, oh God, I try to get them out of my mind, but some of them might be becoming extracurricular and all these dumb things. It's essential what's happening in our music classrooms right now. We are in a season, in a society filled with distraction. In our music classrooms, it's all about the opposite. We're training our young people to be focused, to be community-driven, to be reflective, to be looking out for one another. That's what's happening every day in our music classrooms. So, don't talk about it like it's an extra. It's essential. If you want to talk with people about the nuts and bolts of STEM and all these other things, I appreciate it all. But in music, we are a world language. We are talking about physics. We are humanities. We are all of the subject matters all piled into one class. So, much love to all of you for being here and being a part of it and helping our young people understand the importance of the arts. Here's Manteca. Thanks so much. Big thanks to Stoughton High School. Great work. Thanks so much. Thanks for being here. Have a great night.